Hi, this is Aaron Azrod, and welcome to the 121st episode of the Truth Island podcast. An ideological battle which has been brewing is the idea of whether man exists to serve the state or if the state exists to serve man. In America, we are told one of our greatest virtues is our individual freedom and our ability to seek out the life in which we desire, while imposing as little on society as humanly possible. The man, for instance, who can build his own home, grow his own vegetables, think his own thoughts, and requires nothing from anyone else is often said to be the ideal man. According to writer Ayn Rand, an individual is a man who says, I will not run anyone's life, nor let anyone run mine. I will not rule nor be ruled. I will not be a master nor a slave. I will not sacrifice myself to anyone, nor sacrifice anyone to myself. While many Americans would be quick to agree that America is predicated on rugged individualism, another quote that comes quickly to mind, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, stated by former President John F. Kennedy, suggests that there are times in our lives where a person must put his own interests behind that of the collective needs. At times, society has asked men to sacrifice their lives, pay taxes, recycle, and commit to endeavors that no man alone can achieve. As Ralph Waldo Emerson put it, no member of a crew is praised for the rugged individuality of his rowing. Indeed, everywhere we turn, we are presented with conflicting messages. A rugged individual is said to be a strong individual, but can also be considered to be a selfish one as well. As many billionaires are quickly finding out, the very same qualities that can lead droves of people to admire you can soon become the very same characteristics that society comes to despise in you. Joining me to help figure out just how rugged we all are, I am joined once again by Kenny. Kenny, let me start by asking you, is it better to be strong and hated or weak and loved?
It's absolutely, undeniably, as far as I can see, better to be strong and hated than weak and loved.
My impulse is going in that direction. Go ahead and tell me why.
Well, if we look at life through the sense of what is life about? Well, one of the last thing that comes to mind for me is life is about having people love you, and having people admire you and pat you on the back and pat you on the shoulders and tell you've done a good job. I would say that's very contrary, at least as far as I know, to what life presents itself to be about. And so the idea of being being weak and loved is, it seems incredibly, it seems contrary to the way of things. But let me change it up a bit and say, okay, I'd personally rather be strong and hated, especially if you're not. It depends, because you can have a strong good man and a strong wicked man, right?
Mm.
But especially if you're a strong good man and you're hated either way. People like, you have the example in people like Socrates. You have the example in people like the Christ. You have example in
I
even
mean,
our
just about
even
every
our
visionary that we have is hated by some. Henry Ford was, scorned by some critics for his working conditions. A lot of our, I guess, robber barons come to mind. And they would argue, well, I was just being strong. Having that kid work 14-hour days is what, allowed us to industrialize and allowed us to pull forward. But there is a balance, though, of, is the strength that's obtained worth the hatred of society? I think at some point there is a trade-off that one makes.
Well, it depends. I mean, so why do they hate you? Do they hate you? I mean, do they hate you because of the very nature of just the very fact that you're strong? Do they hate you because you use your strength for, to oppress and, demonize them? Do they hate you because they're jealous of you? Do they hate you because, you are actually a good human being and they can't stand the fact that, that you remind them of things that they're not? So
Ah,
it really does depend. It depends on why they hate you, because I'll never tell anybody to throw away their strength simply because people are jealous of their strength. I think that that's not any fault of the man's or woman's strength, but it's more of the weakness of the society.
Yes, now that's actually a great distinction. So I think that if you're the best at something, and I think this is something that you said many, many, many podcasts ago, that we have this tendency in our polite society to apologize for the things that we're good at, to kind of preface everything like, oh, I'm not that good at that. This is just something I do on the side. Like we have this like very false modesty that we're all trained to kind of project. So we don't, and the reason that we have this false modesty is so that we intentionally don't face the wrath of envy, right? If we're too boastful with our accomplishments and the things that we're proud of, people are going to get envious. They're going to get jealous. They're going to want to tear us down a peg. They're going to want to, be like, well, he's good at that, but not so good in this or whatever. So we have to kind of put on this false air of modesty. And I say to hell with that. Like, if you love yourself and you love your strengths, if your strengths are what makes you who you are, if you believe that you're a good writer, if you believe that you're a good actor, if you believe you're a good philosopher or musician,
Yes.
be proud of that and own it and rock it. Don't denigrate yourself in order to appease envious people. Or like, I was reading this one book that suggested that if you have a very special talent or great ideas, make sure to suppress them a little bit, like make sure that you keep it on the down low, because no one you don't want to outshine the master, or you don't want to like step on people's toes. And I say that's a load
Oh,
of that's
the
hogwash.
48 Laws of Power, I believe. Is
Yes,
that it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Robert Greene, right? And I couldn't disagree with that more, because I don't give a crap. Like, I would rather be myself and just relish in who it is that I am than give a crap about negotiating some ladder, or kind of negotiating the hierarchy of whatever. Like, if someone on top says, yeah, this guy's kind of arrogant and I don't really like the way he walks, well, then get rid of me. I don't really give, I don't need to make you happy. I don't need to rule over you. I just want to be who I am. I want to be myself in my strengths and in my weaknesses and whatnot. So I think that if you're compromising your rugged individualism, or the things that make you you, to make others happier or less fearful of you or less resentful of you, that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, there's a difference as to back to your earlier example about, the person who says you're arrogant. I think there's a difference between a person who's arrogant and a person who's confident.
Yeah.
But often to the weak mind, there isn't. And to the jealous person, there isn't. To the envious person, there isn't. So when they see you confident, they automatically attribute arrogance to you. And
Mm.
that's because they're coming from a place of, well, eyes that are clouded with hate can't see jack shit. And so
Yes.
as Confucius says, no. So I
Uh,
think I think that there's a big difference between confidence says, "Oh, I can do it. I've assessed my capabilities. I've assessed my talents. I've assessed my knowledge, and I can do this. I know that I can do this, and I'm good at doing this." Arrogance is, "Oh, all that, but I can do it better than you."
right.
And you can, and you can't tell me nothing. You can't teach me a damn thing.
Mm.
Arrogance always has its nose stuffed up at other people, raised up at other people.
I always say that, like, arrogance talks, but confidence walks.
Ooh.
So, like, you like anyone who's saying, "Oh, I could do that better," or whatever. It's like, if you're really confident, you wouldn't even say those things. You would just be quietly painting your masterpiece, and then when it's ready, you show the world, and don't even say a damn bloody word about it. So, yeah, no, I think you are right. Like, don't be boastful, but I guess if you are really good at something, you won't even need to really do all that much advertising or PR for it. You'll just do it, and then people will naturally be like, "Whoa, how did you paint like that?" Or, "Whoa, how did you do that? Could you teach me that?" Or, "I really admire your work," or something. And as I
Yeah.
said, I think like the best advertising is just a really awesome product. I've come to realize, as I get older, I realize that's more and more true.
I believe that. I believe that. I mean, I would say that a majority of the time, that's usually the case, except of course if You're dealing with people who have no idea how to, who are dealing in a world where they have to play a little bit of the politics, and they're even unwilling to play it. There've been ideas that where how no matter how good they are, because there are certain gatekeepers in the way, they never see the light of day because they're not willing to play ball the way the gatekeepers want the ball to be played. Um,
This is now this was really interesting because this was something, during we talked last week that we kind of I disappeared for a couple months in deep reflection, and I did do some thinking about the gatekeepers and this other stuff. And I realized that if you appease the gatekeepers, there's a price of admission to get past the gatekeeper, and
mm,
that's selling part of your soul or selling part of yourself away, right? Because the gatekeeper is going to come into your life and say, well, you really want to change this up, and this demographic is more interested in hearing this, and maybe you should be a little bit more controversial, or maybe you should make your episodes blah blah blah. I'm just thinking of that invisible voice of my head, and you can pay the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper is probably right. Like, what they recommend and what they suggest you do might actually attract more followers. But then with every gatekeeper that you listen to, you're slicing away part of yourself each and every
yep.
time. You're like, a
I
part of yourself is dying.
Yeah.
And I've just arrived at this point where it's like, I'd rather be a man in his entirety than, a man watched by all, but there's nothing left of that man.
Yeah, I exactly. So it comes back to your initial question of would you rather be strong and hated? Because you're being strong by resisting the gatekeepers, but they hate you for that. And so what you find is that there's a certain kind of weakness that a man goes through to acquire the love of others, and it's incredibly devastating. It's incredible. I mean, the kind of person who wakes up in the morning and realizes that everything he's ever done in his life has been to either, make his parents love him, make his wife, his kids love him, his friends love him, make his boss appreciate him. And he's never really made a decision because he's a decent, reasonable, thinking, rational, conscious human being. He's lived his entire life trying to please and appease others, and that's an incredibly weakening thing. It's like kryptonite for man. It's kryptonite, you know.
Yes. Man, what you just said reminds me. I was listening to this a few days ago, this lecture from Seneca, the Roman Stoic. And
Mm,
he said that every time you serve a client or every time that you serve somebody else, you're giving away, you think you're not giving anything away, but you're giving away your time. And at
mm,
the end of your life, you're going to realize, oh my God, I completely prostituted my time and
mm.
myself away to make others happy, when in actuality, they probably didn't give all that much of a crap about you to begin with. And instead, you could have been spending your time doing exactly what it is that you really wanted to do with your time, but instead you decided to prostitute your time away for fame, for glory, for attention, for views, or what have you. And we all kind of actually make these sacrifices every single day without even realizing it. Every single day that goes by that we're prostituting our time, or that phrase like selling out, I suppose. I actually think that even if you're not selling out for money, just by selling out, like every time you compromise your character to appease others, you are
Yeah,
actually selling out in some way.
absolutely. I mean, it's a real thing, and we don't see that because it's not the same. It's not the same as your favorite band selling out, to Coke for $500,000 or
Yeah, right?
whatever, to do a commercial that has nothing to do with their branding, has nothing to do with the kind of music they make or who they represent themselves to be. Well, you do the same thing every day, when you wear certain things to impress your friends, or you say certain things to impress your friends, or you go certain places to impress your friends, or you drink certain things or smoke certain things. Who knows? You know what I mean? The point is simply that, and it happens even on a very small basis. It doesn't have to be something, major, like, oh my goodness, I did this drug just to impress my friends. But no, something as simple as saying the right thing at work, the right thing, quote unquote. So your boss hears you at the right exact moment and says, wow, Vanessa, you've been impressive these days. Like, no, well, not really. You don't really believe half the things that's coming out of your mouth. You don't really believe in the policies. If you had if you had a choice, you'd probably burn that building down to the ground. but here you are playing this politics game, and you feel real shitty about it, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
man, this is absolutely right. And when you think about work, for example, I feel like if there's this saying where it's like, if you do blue collar work, your body
Mm.
aches. If you do white collar work, your mind aches. And if you do no work, your bank account aches. And like there's a tax to be paid, but when I was younger, I worked a lot of like physical jobs, right?
Yeah.
Lifting boxes,
Yeah.
moving stuff, cleaning toilets, and so forth. And I would look at the white collar workers, but man, look at that comfy, nice chair that guy's sitting in, and gets to go to his Starbucks and get that, latte, whatever garbage. And
Yeah.
but I realized that white collar work actually comes at a price, and it comes at the price of you actually sell part of your soul, because when you're in those meetings, right, you're agreeing to stuff that you don't necessarily believe to be true. You're servicing a client, you're servicing a boss, you're servicing, I think of the lawyer that's well compensated, and that lawyer might be defending a client that they actually don't really believe in. Like they could care less about their claim or their case, but that client is paying a crap ton of money, and they're like, oh yeah, of course, you make a, you have a reasonable case here. We're going to take this before the judge of the Second Circuit and do what, like, but do you really believe in that? Are these the things that you would die on a hill for? And when we think about life, there are so many times that we just naturally make that sacrifice without even thinking it. It's like we're conditioned to just keep our mouth shut and make that sacrifice. But it really starts tainting the soul after a while. I think a part of yourself gets corrupted. It's that old saying that if you wear the mask long enough, the mask actually becomes who you are.
Yeah. It's very painful. It's very painful. I think a lot of people feel this disintegrity, this ripping apart of yourself from yourself. It's very painful. So I think that I don't think that many people have the courage and the strength it takes until, of course, they're fed up. Usually, people come to this point in their life where they're fed up. Like,
Mm.
oh, was it? It's usually old people. You know what I mean? They don't care anymore. They have nothing to prove to you. You know, and
Yes, yes.
and kids do the same thing, at least to a certain extent, to a certain point. It's like a 1 to 4, maybe 5 year old who just says exactly what they're thinking and they have no filter whatsoever. But eventually we start learning these filters and social cues and what the society demands of us, which is understandable. There are certain things that we just need to keep under wrap. There's certain things of the soul, things of the inner workings of the mind and the heart that do need to be expressed and do need to be acknowledged, even if it's just by you.
Yes, and that's I was really thinking about, these filters in life. I was like taking a walk, and I remember like I love wearing like sweatpants, for example,
Mm.
and I just love wearing undershirts. Like I just don't give two craps. And
You
that's,
bum.
but yeah, right. I like that. And it was funny because I used to wear sweatpants to school, like when I was in high school. Like I didn't give a crap.
Yeah.
I would just wear sweatpants. And I had
Mm.
this like one friend that would be like, come on, man, like wear some, like some nice like dark jeans or something. Don't you want girls to look at you? And eventually I kind of just caved in a bit and started wearing, but what I realized is that like I'm actually, my girlfriend said something interesting to me. She said when I'm sitting here and podcasting in my undershirt or whatever, I actually am the most natural version of myself. Like this is actually who I am, like some dude in sweatpants and an undershirt. That is my like natural manifestation of who I am.
Yeah.
And when you're dressing up and when you're putting on these societal filters. The societal filters is what you wear. It could be what you say. It could be what you do. Because let's be honest, if you ask anybody, wearing sweatpants is probably the most comfortable form of clothing that you can possibly wear.
Yeah.
Anything else that you're wearing is to kind of appease others. You're just trying to
Mm.
make other people happy. And in actuality, they probably don't one care all that much. I don't know why that friend was so obsessed with what I was wearing in high school, but whatever. I think that's like an unnatural kind of, and maybe he had like some insecurities of himself and he was projecting them onto me looking back. But I think,
Well, it's high school. Everybody has
yeah,
insecurities.
of course. So I think that becoming yourself, like the earlier you become yourself, the
Yeah.
better off you're going to be. And I actually think that people will people actually love me a lot more when I'm myself than when I put on the filters. You know what I mean? Like, again, maybe in a work situation they don't love me so much, but in the arenas of life where it really matters, people do love you when you're not ashamed of your strengths, or you're not ashamed of who it is that you are, because they see that happiness, they see that glint in your eyes, and they see that happiness in you, and you're actually of much more service to others when you are in that self-actualized state.
Yeah, I mean, I think the right people will absolutely love you for it, and because it's something that everybody wants to be themselves, and they really want to feel they want to feel that freedom that comes with being an actual human being,
Yes,
you know, an actual a person with integrity who is the same no matter where they are.
exactly. Okay, now I kind of want to shift focus to another element. Is, let's say you're really strong at something, you're really good at something,
Yeah.
and you've overcome that hurdle of like dismissing the haters, dismissing the jealous folk. But then there's a legitimate concern where, what happens if you're extremely profitable at doing something, but you're not very charitable with your talents? You know, like I do think that there could be point in which a person does accrue a lot of wealth, and most people don't accrue a lot of wealth just with their own two hands. Usually, you know, if you own a factory, there's a hell of a lot of people working for you, or people working in warehouses, people, you know, building things, scientists that are, you know, doing research and develop for you. So, you know, any billionaire who says I'm a rugged individual, and I'm like, really? Did you go into the factory all by yourself and build all this? Yeah, okay. So I think there is a point in our society where you have a lot of talents, you have a lot of strengths. It may not be wise to be stingy with those talents, and I think there is a legitimate voice and there's a legitimate guilt that can kind of, you know, even the Bible, I think, speaks a lot about charity. You know, I was researching for this episode, I saw so many passages of scripture of where wealthy people should be charitable and help those that are in need. And I think that's a much more legitimate criticism of, like, it's okay if you have talents that you ruggedly developed on your own, but if you're in a
Mm.
position to kind of give back, you know, it's not it's we don't live in this like social Darwinistic world where it's every man for himself.
Well, charity is always a good thing. I don't see. I do believe that it would be good. It would be the ideal world, but it would be good if people who did wonderfully in their whether it's their businesses, whether it's their expression of talents, inheritance, whatever it may be, things that have made their lives, how you say, much easier, their finances, improve their financial situations and all that, to be charitable to those who are around them.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't live in that kind of world. But let me say this: rugged individualism is actually the best place to be for charity. And let me explain. Now, I saw an interview with Denzel Washington where they were asking him a question about the racial situation in America,
Yeah.
and he said they were asking. They said, what do you think would be? I can't quote the interviewer verbatim, but what the idea was simply, what do you think would be, what kind of policies do you think that could be put in place to help the racial division in America? And Denzel's answer was brilliant. He says you can't legislate love
Yeah.
in the sense of you can't make love a law. That makes no sense. The very nature of it being love means that you must have a choice to do it or not to do it from your innermost being. That's what makes it love. So I think it's the same thing here. For a person to be actually charitable, it means that they have to be actually individuals. Because if they're rugged, quote unquote, rugged individuals, it means that they are taking time and thought within themselves to actually consider you and do something for you. So rugged individualism is actually the best place you want to be, as far as I can see, for an actual expression of charity. Because charity by nature is also an expression of love. It's not something that should be forced upon a person, but rather expressed by one's own choice.
I think that's quite brilliant, and it's brilliant on a number of different levels. First off, if you are dependent on someone else, it's really hard for you yourself to be charitable. So, for
Yeah.
example, let's say I'm sleeping on some dude's couch, right? I don't have a place of my own. Am I really in a position to turn to someone else and be like, well, I don't really own this place. I'm kind of like bumming on this guy's couch, but you can sleep on the floor, right? Am I in a position to like just offer someone else's apartment up for grabs when I myself don't have an apartment?
No.
Probably not, right? So I think from a very practical standpoint, those who are still lost in the link of dependency can by their they can be charitable in some ways but not in all ways, right? Because they
Not in
have
all,
they
it's
have a
not.
limited capacity to offer it up. A guy
Yeah.
a guy who has $1 million is in a much better place to offer someone charity than someone who has $100 in their bank account and they really need that
Yeah.
for dinner for the next week or so. And that's a really good point. I think where it gets dangerous though,
Mm.
and I think that this is one of the problems that we're having right now, though, is I do think that, and this is a kind of a hangover from the late 19th century, early 20th century, is that we do have some incredibly wealthy people who believe that their wealth was solely generated through their own efforts, through their own merit. They don't ever credit like the teacher that helped them read. They don't credit the mentor that helped taught this. They don't credit the parent that read to them at night. They don't credit the society that made this computer lab available to them, or the scientists that like were on the cutting edge of that technology and they were the one missing link that put it over the hill. And I think that the danger comes for those people who are highly accomplished and are in a position to put charity, to kind of say, hey, I kind of got here on my own, like I climbed this mountain 100% by myself, and it's only fair to expect everyone else to do the same. Like it's only fair. Like you can't really compel me to help anybody. And I agree with what Denzel Washington said, that if you legislate this thing, if you force somebody to like empty out their purse or whatever, yeah, we can do that, but they'll do it begrudgingly. It's much better if they naturally have a proclivity or have that natural inclination to give back. I'm wondering, because I hear a lot about right now it's definitely in vogue to tax the rich and all this other good stuff. I'm wondering if there's a way to naturally create that sense of like giving back, and maybe creating a sense of empowerment to those who give back in some way, so that like if we do raise taxes, like it's done through acceptance and not through reluctance. Like I think there's
Yeah.
perhaps some way that we can have a conversation with these billionaires. There's a way that we can kind of have a conversation with our most successful people who would label themselves rugged individuals, and be like, all right, you're right. If we force you to do this and you don't fully understand the merits of what you're doing, you're going to become resentful to the society that you're a part of. I'm wondering if there's some way that we can talk with these people and get them to understand that once you have a lot, it's natural to kind of want to give back.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, the desire to talk to them or to have things, to have them see and understand. I can understand that, and I feel that sometimes. But I don't think it's possible, and here's why. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but as far as I can see, now if you see things differently, please let me know.
Yeah.
I think that people, especially those who have that mindset of I built everything from the ground up with my bare hands. It's like, okay, calm down, boomer. It's so I think that people who have that kind of mentality, they do actually see themselves as the orchestrator of their own success. And to a very large extent, they actually are. It takes a certain kind of man, it takes a certain kind of understanding to look at the history of your success. So, for example, your parents who birthed you, your teachers, like you mentioned earlier, your teachers who had taught you, the books that you were afforded to buy, the people who wrote those books, the opportunities maybe after school that, a certain friend brought forth to you, and that, that got you to wherever you are. I mean, all kinds of things play into, if we were totally, I mean, to the extreme individualistic, I mean, just individualistic agents, we would be floating in midair naked. Be-
Right.
because the very ground that supports us is, I mean, it's necessary. It's not a living entity, at least as some might say it is, but as far as I know, it's not a living entity. But it is something that supports us. The clothes on our backs weren't made or stitched by our own hands. They were stitched and made by someone else. And I think that I think that it takes a certain kind of mind to not only acknowledge that, okay, to a reasonable extent, I did build my wealth, but I have a whole history. I have a whole, a whole armada of people who were made themselves available through one means or the other to help me get to where I am. Now, that's not always the case. There are some people who are like that. I would say they're very few. But even if there are even if but even if those kind of people, I believe, are kind of already naturally disposed to giving. But if you're trying to deal with the people who are absolutely convinced that it is their wealth, no, there's no force in hell or in heaven that can rip money out of their hands or out of their pockets. And very well, I think that's perfectly fine, because it's the only way that I can see people like that changing is an entire change of their nature, their hearts, their beings. There has to be something that works in from the either from the from it has to be. I mean, I've never seen. I've only seen it once, I believe. I've rarely seen a person get into an argument and change their mind, even when presented with actual evidence and facts. It just doesn't happen, because the ego is always involved, and we're not really arguing for the sake of the idea. We're arguing. It's like an ego battle. We're arguing for the sake of our own school, and we're arguing for the sake of our own dignity. So when we lose, we don't really admit we lose. We just look for another way to undercut and insult the opponent. And that's just the way of human beings. This is our nature. So when it comes to money, I think we're twice as deadly. And so often it would take something on a it would take something on a very actual, something catastrophic, something, I mean, we're talking something big, for a human being to change his mind naturally and give freely to others with joy. It's just not in our nature. Should I say, it's just not in the nature of many of us. And I would say it's highly impossible.
Yeah, I don't know if I can refute what you're saying, but maybe I can slip through the cracks just a little bit. And I'm thinking of this quote from Aristotle that, the man that can live in 100% solitude is either mad or a god. And I think no matter how wealthy you are, there comes a point where there's some period of reflection of, well, what is my legacy, or what how does the world view me? I think there's some
Yeah.
creeping thoughts that enter everyone's mind. And I would say, like, the two times that I can think about in history where this has happened is, in ancient Rome. A lot of people pursue some form of adulation or some form of accomplishment which they think has social credit or social value, right? Like, a lot of our goals and a lot of our aspirations come from, like, well, what does this world value, right? That's why,
Yep.
and that's why everybody chases money, because people chase money because they know that it's literally social currency. If I have a lot of money, people will value me for having that thing that everyone values. If people if people stopped valuing money, well, then who the hell is going to pursue it? If money was something that we hated or we found disgusting, then people would stop pursuing it. So I think, to some degree, the society does set the we set the bar of what it is that we value versus the things that we don't value. And in ancient Rome, we actually, the people who built public works like public bathhouses, those rich people were loved by their community. So if you were a wealthy person, people loved you. They were like, "Oh, you're so generous and you're so kind. Thank you for building this public shower for all of us to kind of get in here." And that actually made it kind of tricked the rich person into giving more, because they had this addiction towards being loved, and they had this addiction towards fulfilling a role that society loved. And if the Romans would have turned to those rich people and said, "Give us your money, we want to build that bathhouse," if they would have like pushed that guy against a wall, he probably would have fought back. He probably would have bit. He probably would have embezzled his money in some other fund or whatever. But the fact
Yeah.
that society created that like love, that built-in love of like, we'll love you if you trade up your money and build up this bathhouse, it actually worked. And I think it also worked. The other time that this worked was in the early 20th century, where I guess a Rockefeller or a Carnegie or a Vanderbilt could look forward to having their name on some kind of library and feel veneration and feel love for that. I think in that case, there was more pressure and more like, "Oh, you're just being a stingy, you know what? Like, you need to pay up right now." And I don't think we get the best outcomes. But I think returning to that Roman model, where it's like, we're not pushing your back against the wall. But maybe if society started praising and loving people who gave more, that would kind of create, because these people are highly competitive, right? And if they see that this other man is getting all of this love and praise for being so charitable, then they might want to kind of dip their feet into the competitive pool and get some of that love for themselves.
Well,
How does that sound?
well, no, I think what you're saying makes absolute sense. It's true. I mean, you see it all the time with, with Twitter. But what was this? There was a situation, I believe, not too long ago, about a couple. I think the couple was either in Ghana or in South Africa.
Mhm.
I'm leaning towards South Africa, but I'm not sure. But it was an African couple. The man had taken his girlfriend to a KFC to propose to her. So, he got flack because, I mean, who proposes at a KFC? You know what I mean? Okay. And so he got flack for that. A lot of people, not like negative, people weren't being mean. They were just, ribbing and making fun of him here and there. But one thing happened, and KFC stepped in and decided they were going to pay for the wedding, or, you know, yeah, just do that. And if
Man,
not pay for the wedding,
I gotta propose in a McDonald's or something.
and then have people make fun of you. That's how it works. And then
In an
and then
undershirt.
so
In an undershirt.
and sweatpants.
It's like, I don't care. I'm gonna have the
Who is
best
this
darn.
homeless man? Let's give him some money.
I'll have the best damn wedding ever.
Amen, brother. So they decided to either pay for the wedding or pay for a large portion of the wedding. But here it didn't stop there. Immediately KFC did this, another company did this, and then another company did this, and then another company. So next thing you know, people were offering them cakes, free cakes, offering them a honeymoon, offering them, a first car or whatever it may be. And they just got a buckload of stuff from so many people. And this is an effect. Okay, it's this, it's an effect. It's like a what's it called, a um
It's like
snowball
domino.
effect, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, domino effects. So in the sense of, when one large corporation pays attention to either a person or a situation and throws money at it, and the public responds with awe, other large corporations wants to get in on that and do something as well.
Yeah.
So if large corporations are doing it, it's not hard to believe that human beings, I mean, large corporations they're run by human beings. So this is just human nature, but being expressed in the body of a large corporation. So human beings naturally want to do this. But here's the thing. When something like this is done, and for this specific reason of the public's affirmation and love towards them, I don't mind it. I think it's fine, because first of all, that couple, their life has changed.
Yeah.
they saved a lot of money for that wedding. They've been giving a lot of things, so their life has changed, and I love that. But here's the thing: I'm still as cynical as the day I was born. And here, so because when I first came out of the womb, I cried. I was like, I don't want to be here. so, um, so I I think that it's good because it helps a lot of people. Libraries are built, lives are changed, in institutions are built, schools are built. But at the end of the day, it's not because not often, and it's very hard to judge the content of a man's heart, and so I try not to do that. But the problem is that it's not for the right reason. It's not for the right reason. And I there is benefits and I don't mind the benefits. I don't even mind them doing it because it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
But when I look at it critically, I have to say that I don't think it's for the right reason. If you want to do something for your community or for a people, you do it because of you do it because of benefit to them, not benefit to you. Now, the benefit to you comes naturally out of that. Amen, brother. That's fine. But to go looking for, hey, we need to get our ratings up with the public. I see that we're down in the polls, and so we need to go kiss more babies. Okay, like, no, sure, I guess that would work. After kissing the babies, your polls do go up, and the public they think you're a wonderful person. But the truth is, at the end of the day, whether you are a good person or not, you didn't do that specific action for the right reason.
Yeah, you are 110% right about that. And it even, even connects to this idea in Judaism, like the highest form of mitzvah or good deed is a good deed that's performed when no one is watching and no one will ever find out. So it's done anonymously. Whereas
Yeah,
all of the mechanisms I'm talking about are sort of tricking and, just tricking people into doing really good things. And I guess
yeah,
my argument would be we kind of just have to meet people based on where they're at and based on their inherent nature. So
yeah.
I think it's awesome that there are people who are intrinsically motivated, especially like I'll tell you something like if somebody in your family has a particular disease or they died from it, then you have an intrinsic built-in nature to give to that charitable cause because you were afflicted by it personally, right? And
Yeah,
that's
that
that
makes sense.
that's something that just organically happened to that individual. Like, oh my
Mm.
goodness, I lost this person to breast cancer, and therefore I want to fund that research, and that's fantastic. I think that with the people that are sort of being tricked or cajoled because their ratings are going to go up and they're addicted. We're all addicted to dopamine, right? We love that dopamine rush. And I would say that if we give these people a dopamine rush for being charitable or paying higher taxes or paying their workers more, if that's like a dopamine rush that we can offer society, I think we just kind of have to play it. I agree with you that
No, no, no. Yeah,
yeah, I agree with you at the end of the day. It would have been nicer if that person would have just been like, hey, I'm going to pay my workers a lot more because I too once was a low paid worker, or I too once, worked for minimum wage, and I know how that feels and how hard it is to get by. That would be the better road. I agree with you. I think though that building in these incentive structures for adulation and for glory, I guess if you want to call it, to get people to take upon collective action, and again voluntarily, because I think when we get to that, you will be a part of the collective, you will sacrifice, comrade. I think when we get to that, when we get to that level, well, then that person becomes resentful and then they fight back. But if they kind of see someone else doing it and then they feel that sense of guilt or that sense of like, well, I want to be in this race as well. Just like with the KFC example, right? If somebody forced KFC, you will pay for that man's wedding. KFC, I've been like, get the hell away from me. Like, like don't tell me what to do. But then, KFC saw this other company doing it, and it
no,
just,
they were the first
oh
ones.
yeah, yeah, right. So KFC did it, and then some other company
Yeah.
saw that, and they wanted to get into that glory pool. I think why not? Like if this is what motivates people and this is what gives them dopamine rushes, I think that's just a lever that we need to to pull and push. It's
I
not.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. So the way I see it, that's how a wise king operates. I think that in order to deal with this world, I think it's a shrewd decision. It's still a wise decision on the person who's, so let's just say you had the power to make policy and you made policy that worked like this and it actually ended up working. Well, that was just shrewd on your part. You understood the nature of humans. You understood the nature of the basic urges, the basic human urges and what we desire. And you used that to bring an outcome that was beneficial to the society. That's yeah, it's shrewdness. It's a kind of wisdom. It's a sharp cutting edge wisdom that that uses basically, and that we do it all the time, you know, we do it all. I mean, excuse me, I mean, what is it called, having prisoners work for the nation at an incredibly cheap price. We say, well, that's just immoral. Well, yeah, sure, whatever, but it's still pretty shrewd because what you're doing there is you're taking these people who have committed crimes and been removed from society, right?
Mhm.
And society doesn't really pay attention to them. And so what you do is you take them and you say you put them to work to, to either, you're basically selling them out to work for other companies and work for the states. Now, this is where it things, this where cutting edge, that kind of wisdom, it's just sharp. It's really, it's sharp, and to the point where people will say, well, is it right or is it wrong? Well, I don't know, but it is sharp. It's a smart thing. Once you understand basic human nature, once you have a basic understanding of what humans are like, then it works.
This what you just said actually reminds me of a famous study that was done during the First World War. And believe it or not, it is very difficult for one man to voluntarily kill another man. And there was this famous study done in World War I where they actually calculated the number of bullets fired, and they actually concluded that a lot of soldiers were just firing randomly into the sky or randomly not hitting people because they didn't actually want to
Didn't
kill
want to
anybody.
kill.
Yeah, they didn't want to kill. It's actually not within our nature to do that. Our individuality, our individual morals tell us it doesn't matter if that person's a German. It doesn't matter if they're a part. I don't want to. So what the U.S. government kind of did is they launched all of these propaganda campaigns, making Germans appear like monsters, or coming up with all these slang words like Huns and all sorts of other derogatory terms to kind of dehumanize the enemy. And what they found, and they also, while they were doing that, they also built up, you're a part of the collective. You're here to defend democracy. You're here to defend the free world, And the more that they kind of peddled that stuff up, where the individual soldier felt, hey, I'm a part of this mission, this crusade to defend the free world. And, the same thing was actually done during the Crusades. Like,
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
not within an individual Christian may not care about overtaking Jerusalem and taking back the Holy Land, but Pope Urban II said, you are a part of restoring God's glory and all of this, restoring all of this wonder to the world. And that kind of tricked man into going against his very nature in order to become a killing machine, because he thought that he was a part of the collective or something grander than himself. So it can be used, this collective trickery can be used for wonderful things like getting corporations to pay higher taxes, but can also be used for very fiendish purposes if we're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it. It's the way of it's the way we are. I mean, most of our show me anything in this world that man invents or the way or a thought by man that can't be used for both evil and good. The thing about it is, humans having to demonize one another before they're able to. I mean, it's much easier to pull a trigger on a demon than it is, or an animal, than it is on an actual human being, because we tend to, I mean, and we do it, and it's not just at war. It's not just in war that we do this. We do this every day, right? So believe it or not, Republicans are not animals, and they're not like, crazy people, and liberals aren't, like nut jobs out there who are, just ready to, I don't know, destroy the country. but we say things like that, left and right's always fighting, and they're always calling each other names, and then they're always reinforcing their ideas with one another, while at the same time demonizing the others. So we have very derogatory or very insulting, and I don't think insults are bad. I think insults are perfectly fine when dealing with um, opposition. But there's a certain kind of, how you say, there's a smart insult, and there's a very dangerous kind of insult, in the sense of when you repeatedly call somebody like a dog. It changes the nature of the insult, because there are a couple of things insults are trying to accomplish. They're actually trying to, in insults often, especially amongst guys, we use it to endear ourselves to each other. We call each other all kinds of names so that we tell each other we're friends. Believe it or not, that's how we communicate. That's how we say, hey, you're my friend, so I'm calling you an idiot, you know?
Now, this is very interesting with the example you just used, because it reminds me of the phrase "politics is war," and which it always has been, and it's getting perhaps
It
even
is.
worse. And it actually uses the World War One strategy, because you, one, demonize your opponent, even if it's just a minutia issue about building a road or something. No, no, that man is a buffoon, and they're just trying to take over the world, blah blah blah. So you're using the demonization strategy, but
Yeah,
then you're also reinforcing you're a part of the progressive, or you're a part of the conservative effort to restore democracy and blah blah. So
righteousness.
yeah, righteousness. Thank you, my friend. So I see both of those things going in there. So now that I'm really thinking about this clearly, and I'm glad that we went through war and politics to kind of come out on the other end. I think that maybe collectivism can be used to get the individual to do good things that they may not do on their own, but the individual is a check on the collective to make sure that the collective is not doing batshit crazy stuff. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe the two things are kind of going hand in hand with one another.
Well, that's how it starts. That's how it usually starts. But the collective usually becomes far more powerful than the individual, because it's the collective. One one man can never fight 1,000 men. It's just, unless the man is like freaking Hercules, right? There is no way he's fighting 1,000 men.
Well, welcome to
So
Truth Island. That's what we do here, man. We fight the
they will string us up, man. so
Bring it on, collective.
so I think that, usually there is, in the beginning, you have that individual who has that power to check the collective. You have this usually with the initial CEO of a company. You have the how you say, the governor of the whole states, whatever it may be. But when the people lose their identity, when the people become the hive mind, we are hive, it becomes almost impossible to check them anymore, because now they are not only, greater in number. They have a collected mission. They have a collected ideology that's usually turns anybody who is in opposition into an enemy. And if you are the enemy, and here's the thing about fighting, here's the thing about when about calling your side righteous and the other side demons. Now, if you and a friend fights over, I don't know, a girl or a video game, sure. If you fight and you still call him John or Bill, whatever his name is, it's just a fight. You fight,
Yeah.
you duke it out, and it's done. You walk away. Or if you're good friends, you end up laughing about it, and you're back together. It's a fight. It's done. It has an end. When it's a righteous versus demons, there is no end. The only end is death, is destruction of the demons, whoever the demons are. But here you have two sides that think they're righteous and think the other side are demons simultaneously, which means that there is no bridge anymore. There is no, unless of course there might still be an opportunity for a bridge to be made, but what you're doing is you're making a holy war. And the only way a holy war comes to an end is if the infidels or the demons or the spawns of Satan, whatever it may be, are totally eradicated. And that's incredibly dangerous.
Yes, absolutely. I want to tackle one thing about our, like, to kind of close off here about what our rugged individuals can do
Mm.
when the collective has been corrupted. I think there's many. I think the way to look at it is this: if you're a rugged individual and you're in the wrong, because not every, by the way, not every rugged individual is a saint. There are some rugged individuals who are just flat out weird and wrong and just are not saying anything of use. And I
Yeah,
think I don't want to like ascribe the most saintly characteristics to any given loner. Some loners are mad weird and mad
a lot of
dangerous.
loners. That's why they're loners.
Yeah, right. Like, not every loner is like this wondrous philosopher who has a great who's going to help us. So I think
No, he
the
can be the Unabomber.
yeah, exactly, right. So I think that one thing, one piece of advice I heard, recently is like, for the individual to go up to the collective, don't go against the collective. Don't fight some Twitter war or like, take on some mob of unruly people. I think of like Jordan Peterson or someone just going in front of a crowd of people and just arguing with. It's like that's not how you convert people. It's just not going to work, right?
No,
The
it's not.
way the way that you can kind of convert people is just talking to other individuals and just pulling them aside, because I think when a person, when other eyes and ears are watching, then that person is going to respond to what the group wants them to say and do. But if you're like, hey, my friend, how about you and I just go for a long walk today, or let's go for a cup of tea, just you and me, and you actually have a
Yeah,
conversation with that person, one of two things might happen. You may find out that, well, like, all right, well, hold on, this rugged individual actually has something good to say, or maybe me as a rugged individual is wrong. Maybe the collective is right, and that could be the case. So I think that that's a good testing mechanism, is for rugged individuals to go out there, start pulling people away from the herd, testing their ideas. Maybe some of those
yeah,
ideas will blow up and they're foolish. Maybe some of those ideas will stick. But I think having those individuals is incredibly useful to society, to test out bad ideas and to test out incredibly good ideas, because we need
yeah,
people to be stuck in the hive mind in order to build pyramids and do other things that we want to accomplish. I get that. But we also need rugged individuals to kind of test proof the system and make sure that the system is doing virtuous things and not doing horrendous things and just, mindlessly coming up with new ways to kill each other or do anything like that.
yeah.
And I think if we get that balance right, that this could work, man. Kenny, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for having me, Aaron.
This concludes the 121st episode of the Truth Island podcast. I'm Aaron Azrod.